In the wake of COVID-19, we have a tremendous opportunity in our churches to build an army of volunteers and leaders, not just an audience. So, all of the new volunteer roles that are emerging during this season are pretty crazy. And added to that, the many existing roles that we have that have to be adapted to ensure the health of our congregation, as well as make sure that we remain compliant with local guidelines. I do know those guidelines change from place to place, and sometimes they're dramatically different. But one thing dramatically affects us all. The guidelines, whatever they are, they change what our church will look like in the short term, at least the short term. Now, the ideal situation before was to max out our parking and seating capacity. And in this transition back to some kind of normal, it is going to look different. And the volunteer roles that we need from week to week will look different as well. Now, when you have a standardized template for your role profiles, I really mean job descriptions here, it provides so much clarity to your volunteers in the midst of so much uncertainty in their lives, especially when they're serving in more than one role. Now, we've given you dozens of new and adapted roles that you might consider for your church, and we've arranged those by ministry category so that you can find them quickly. But I do want to walk you through a couple of examples of both new role profiles and maybe some adjusted ones that you may have in your church. So the first one is an adjusted role. It's your parking team. Now, the parking team is probably now going to do something more like ensuring that parking cones are blocking off every other parking space to maintain social distancing guidelines in your local area, or perhaps you're also using them as greeters as attendees arrive as well. Keep in mind, you're changing this for your local context. I'm just giving you examples. Next, you would have a seating team. Now, seating teams could just be ushers revisited, but they're ensuring that barriers are in place in the worship center to maintain good distancing. They're propping open doors. They're making sure that as attendees arrive, they're welcomed. And they're also maybe dismissing attendees row by row or section by section when the service concludes. Attendance compliancy would be something that is new. For many of us, we're in places where we need to check the head count to make sure we're remaining compliant with local occupancy guidelines and we don't max out our space. So those are some new and adapted roles inside the church, but there are some that are outside the church during the week as well. Those might be digital group leaders. The digital group leader may have been called a teacher before, or it could have been a group leader before, but the point is it's digital and they're focused on the online community and Bible study for a group of adults or students or kids, and you can adapt those roles accordingly. We need to consider what's changed in that role and make sure we've adapted it well. An additional role that you may need to add in that space would be digital group support, because they're going to provide training, support, and troubleshooting for those online meetings that are happening in your church. Regardless of the platform that you use, you may need to consider using a person in that role. Now, whether these roles are completely new or are being adapted for a season, providing clarity will add both competence and confidence to your volunteers, which is really important. And again, I want you to remember there's no one who knows your church and your leaders better than you do. So please take these as a starting point and adapt these descriptions to meet your unique situation.